Good evening and welcome to the Newshour Agenda. I'm Madhavdas GK. Now, the Prime Minister departs for his first foreign trip of his third term. He's headed to Italy to participate in the G7 summit as an outreach country to discuss global South concerns and bilateral cooperation with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. The eyes of the world are once again on India as issues related to security, maritime defense, as well as Ukraine and Gaza wars are likely to be discussed in the summit. This is India's 11th participation in a G7 summit and Prime Minister Modi's 5th consecutive participation. However, opposition has sought to settle political scores once again, targeting the Prime Minister as he's headed to Italy. Congress's Jairam Ramesh has mocked the PM, saying that he's gone to salvage his diminishing international image. He's also drawn a parallel with former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, saying that in 2007, Manmohan Singh emerged as the voice of the global South through substance, not through hollow self-boast. Unquote. Other Congress and India bloc partners back Jairam Ramesh. Listen.
जो उन्होंने कहा है वो सही कहा है। भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने जो दम दिया था कि 400 सीट पार, तो 400 पार का क्या हुआ आप सब जानते हैं, दुनिया जानती है। उसके बाद जो पिछले चुनाव में भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सीटें आई थी उससे भी कम सीटें जीती। भय, आतंक, डर, सीबीआई, ईडी सबका भय दिखा करके, आतंक फैला करके जितने हथकंडे थे सारे हथकंडे को अपनाया और उसके बावजूद भी अगर उनको पिछले बार से सीट कम आई तो निश्चित रूप से मोदी जी की पराजय है।
I totally agree with what Mr. Jairam Ramesh has said, because Mr. Modi has failed the country by his economic and foreign policies, and in fact he has used all these events for his own image management, opting out of RCEP and not getting required treaties signed for the economic benefits of our nation with the foreign countries were among the major economic and foreign failures of Mr. Narendra Modi.
And the BJP is lashed out at the opposition parties, saying that not only does Prime Minister Modi have the mandate of India, but also the respect of the world.
They are not still coming out of the election mode, and they are extending their election propaganda to the international forum also now, criticizing Prime Minister Modi or demeaning Prime Minister Modi. In a way, they are demeaning 144 crore people.
प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी तीसरी बार प्रधानमंत्री बन गए हैं, ये बात कांग्रेस पार्टी स्वीकार नहीं करना चाह रही है। वो अपने हार की विश्लेषण करें और भारतीय जनता पार्टी चुनाव जीत गई इसको स्वीकार कर ले। पूरी दुनिया भर में आज प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी को किस आदर और श्रद्धा के साथ देखा जा रहा है, कितना उनका आज मान सम्मान है, इस बात को कांग्रेस पार्टी नकार करके सच को नकार नहीं सकती है। ये देश के जब पहले राष्ट्रपति एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम बने थे तब भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने उनके नाम को प्रपोजल किया था, कांग्रेस पार्टी उनके नाम का विरोध कर रही थी। सच बात यह है कि इस देश को सांप्रदायिक ध्रुवीकरण की तरफ ले जाना, हिंदू मुस्लिम में ले जाना, यही कांग्रेस पार्टी की राजनीति का हिस्सा रही है।
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
Let's take this across to our guest. Joining us live, we have Tuin Sina, national spokesperson of the BJP. Sushant Sareen is senior fellow of ORF. Ishwaran Bhandari, advocate of the Supreme Court, joins us. We have with us also Lokesh Jindal, political analyst. Tehseen Poonawala is also political analyst. He leads towards the Congress party. Faizan Kidwai is spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party. Let me start first and foremost with you, Tehseen. What exactly does Jairam Ramesh, why is he objecting and using words such as diminished international image, etc.? End of the day, the Prime Minister is going to Italy to represent India at G7.
Thank you for having me on the show, Madhav. And I do personally agree that we should not have attacks on the Prime Minister when he's representing India abroad, because ultimately he's our Prime Minister. So I do believe in that part. But the same Honorable Prime Minister has not upheld himself in glory abroad. Look at the kind of statements he's made about India and the opposition abroad. Be it in Seoul, be it in other places. He said nobody was proud to be an Indian before he became Prime Minister. He said this abroad. He's saying he's been removing the kachra of the opposition for the last 60 years, kachra that the opposition has accumulated. And these are political statements that the Prime Minister has made about the opposition abroad, on foreign soil. He's done it himself. But the larger issue is, look, I'm glad that the Prime Minister has gone. It's not the first time that a Prime Minister, and he's put India in some good position with the Middle East, with Russia, Ukraine, and I give him credit for that. But in our own neighborhood, except for Bangladesh, we have issues, be it Maldives, the raw desk was sleeping, Myanmar, the raw desk was sleeping, Nepal right now has issued a currency with Indian territory, he's not been able to resolve that issue. So he himself, with the global south we have issues, we should have been taking the lead with the Israel-Palestine conflict, because India's position even today remains pro-Palestine. We should have taken the lead. South Africa took the lead. I'm not saying in ICJ and other issues. We've lost the leadership of the global south. You may agree, disagree, we need the leadership, but we've lost it under him. So there are questions that are legitimately that should be asked of the Prime Minister, that what has he gained? Where he deserves credit, he does. Middle East, Quad, etc. But where he's lacked leadership, I think those questions should genuinely be asked in national interest.
Okay.
The language, though, I do agree.
Sushant on this. Let me bring in Sushant on this. Sushant, do you agree with Tehseen? Because he says it is the Prime Minister who has, played politics from foreign soil, and therefore these kind of statements, while he has said that perhaps this is not the best wording, but he says that this politics has been started by the Prime Minister. That's what Tehseen is saying. How do you respond to that?
No, I normally don't agree with Tehseen on anything, but the fact of the matter is the kind of statements which have come out today they're churlish and they're puerile. Look, here is the thing. People make different claims when they go into election. An election result has been thrown up. Now, if the India Alliance had got their 295 seats, and if they had managed to select a Prime Minister by now, the invitation to the G7 summit is to the Prime Minister of India. It's not to Mr. Modi as a person. It's to the Prime Minister of India. If they had managed, with all their problems, managed to select a Prime Minister, that guy would have gone today. Now, Mr. Modi happens to be the Prime Minister. He has been invited as the Prime Minister of India. He has gone. Now, what is the position which the opposition is taking? That he should not go? That he should not go because he has not got the numbers that he had claimed in the election? Well, in that case, then there should not have been a G7 summit which is being held, simply because you've just had massive reverses suffered by the German government and by the French ruling coalition in their elections. You have Biden, who has very low ratings, probably will lose the election if he's not putting his adversary in jail. And you have, in Britain, you have a Prime Minister who might be not the Prime Minister a month from now, less than a month from now. So you should not have a summit. There are serious questions of the world that are going to be discussed. India is being given a seat on the high table, and I think we should welcome that. Now, the second thing is about, this whole thing about what is happening in the neighborhood, the raw desk not functioning. I'm sure my friend Tehseen is not privy to what the raw desk was doing or not, right? The fact of the matter is, if, for example, India had intervened in a major way, it's the very same people who would have said, this is fascism being unleashed in the neighborhood. That India is using this big brother thing to bully the small neighbors. The same people would have said that. Now that you say that, okay, fine, they have their own political processes, we'll deal with them with patience. We are not going to take any knee-jerk reaction. And we are suddenly seeing, even the Maldives, for example, is softening. We've seen what has happened in Nepal. You have a government out there which is, again coming back to India, having their own problems with other countries. You have Sri Lanka, which is in a difficult spot because of the kind of loans that the Chinese have given to them. So they are in a bit of a difficult spot, but nevertheless, they understand the importance of India. So things are moving in the right direction. Right. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it's frankly a mug's game, trying to woo Pakistan, and I think it's good if we stop.
I don't think there's even a debate over there on Pakistan, but yeah, Tehseen, both the points that you made, the immediate neighborhood of course, India, and the larger question that if the same yardstick of Mr. Jairam Ramesh is applied across the world, there will be no G7 summit, because there could be leaders whose popularity could be waxing and waning at any point of time.
Jairam's made a political... Let me address Jairam, but I want to address the neighborhood actually more importantly. Jairam's made a political statement because the Prime Minister does it abroad. Is it justified? I agree with Sushant. You shouldn't. But then the Prime Minister does it abroad. He brings domestic politics in his international commitments, so he shouldn't. Let's address the neighborhood. I agree with everything Sushant is saying. But the fact is, Maldives was a failure of India. You know that the current president, who was then the opposition leader, had a slogan, "Get out India." That was their slogan. What was your reports? You know what's happened in Nepal. But let me come to Pakistan.
The Nepal PM was also here.
30 seconds. If things can come, of course they will come. Point is, there has been a failure. Let's acknowledge. They've come, that's great. There's been a failure. But let me talk about Pakistan. We talk about Naya Kashmir, fabulous. We want Purana Jammu back. Now, 3 terror attacks. Has the Prime Minister spoken? Who's doing it? Is it India doing it, or is Pakistan doing it? What is your policy? Pakistan's carried out 3 terror attacks. Innocent kids are killed. This is the success that the Prime Minister is showing.
So there are questions that legitimately should be asked. Should we not ask for those people who've been martyred right now in Jammu? Aren't they targeted killings? Kids were killed in a bus. What is the government doing? So these are failures of this government, and it is my duty to point it out.
Okay, I didn't want to bring in the terror attacks, but all right, since you've raised the question.
It is, right? It has been.
Since you've raised the question, Sushant, please respond, then I go across to other panelists. Yeah.
Yeah, so now I'm sure it's not Tehseen's case that if the constitutional reforms in 2019 had not taken place, such attacks would not have happened. These attacks were happening even then. We have made substantial progress in Jammu and Kashmir. Yes, there have been certain areas in which that progress is not what should have been made, especially in the political domain. Yes, there have been certain areas which have been neglected. I simply do not deny it. In fact, some of us have been pointing this out. But the fact of the matter is that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is much better than it ever was. Number two, on many of these other issues that Tehseen is pointing out, look, when you are in government, there are two views to every issue which is emerging, right? There is one view which is that, look, there is a problem emerging in Maldives. There is somebody we should back, there is somebody we should not back, or there is somebody we should support, somebody we should not support. Now, people in their own wisdom, with their own knowledge, with their own assessment, come to a certain decision. Sometimes it goes right, sometimes it goes wrong. It's the same government which took up a decision which actually worked out when the Rajapaksas were defeated. Now, it's the same government which takes a certain decision and decides that, a certain course of action, and it doesn't work out, for example, in Maldives. Now, this is the way, these are the vagaries of international politics, because you are not voting out there, you are not controlling their election, right? So the point of the matter is that at the end of the day, it's very easy to point fingers, but when sitting on that hot desk, as the raw desk, as my friend Tehseen calls it, it's a very different ball game. It's not as simple as it makes.
All right, let me come in now. I want to bring in Lokesh. Lokesh, if Mr. Jairam Ramesh is to be believed, that a mandate of 240 is, below par. It is the reduction of an image, etc. By the very same yardstick then, what about the UPA government where Congress led the alliance over there with 140 seats? What was that then?
Madhav, an alliance led by the Congress would always be led by a definite concrete ideology which has a plan ahead, which knows what is good for the future of India. We do not have one individual boasting upon his chauvinism, his ego, and considering every event as his own personal matches. So when you're talking about foreign policy also, right from the beginning, Congress was very clear, whether it was with respect to NAM, whether what posture was India supposed to portray to the world, how it was to become a leader of the third world nations, how it was to take up the cause of developing nations, whether it is climate change, whether it is migration, whether it is Arab-Israel conflict, whether it is Ukraine and other forms of conflicts. But today, the posturing that the Prime Minister carries domestically and the posturing which he ought to portray internationally are not the same. Domestically, today we have a Prime Minister who is perceived as far right by the international media and the international politics. And this Prime Minister, when he goes abroad in G7, today G7, it's talking about Indo-Pacific region, it's talking about migration, it's talking about climate change. And over here, we cannot compromise upon our national security, national interests, just so as to assert India as an assertive nation. It is required that India must adhere to very same ideology that Nehru had coined so that our national interest and security are safeguarded rather than an individual who is trying to portray himself internationally.
Lokesh, all three of the panelists on the other side of a lighter note are just itching to jump off their seats and respond to you. So, without further ado, let me go across to Tuhin Sinha. Tuhin Sinha, I don't know which of those questions you should answer, not having a concrete ideology, personality-driven politics. Please respond in any event to what Lokesh just said.
Let me, not respond to everybody and restrict myself to Jairam Ramesh. Jairam Ramesh's comments today are outrageous. They are in very poor taste. And they perhaps emanate from the Congress party's acute inferiority complex over their mishandling of international affairs right from Nehru's time. Nehru's mishandling of China, right down to, the embarrassment caused by Manmohan Singh's embarrassment of India during the Sharm el-Sheikh. Now, when it comes to G7, from 2003 onwards, India has received an invitation. India has, been an outreach partner and regularly participated. So to opine that, because BJP has come back with a reduced majority, the Prime Minister should not go is simply stupid. Let me not mince words today. Prime Minister's popularity as a global leader is at its peak, irrespective of the result of the elections. His contribution to the world, whether it is the International Solar Alliance, the International Biofuel Alliance, the India Middle East European Corridor, the Quad, all of these stand out, including the inclusion of African Union in the G20 summit. I think, the Congress is suffering from some kind of inferiority complex. In the last 8 days, we have got down to work. We are, working at breakneck speed, but the Congress continues to make absurd statements day in and day out. I think they need to introspect.
Yeah, and let me bring in Faizan on this note. Faizan, if you go on with this yardstick, there are so many examples. I just cited Manmohan Singh during the UPA regime. In 1962, when Jawaharlal Nehru was re-elected, there were reduced numbers from 371 to 361. Does the stature of Mr. Nehru also get diminished by this yardstick?
When Mr. Nehru got re-elected for the third time, he at least got re-elected with a complete majority. There's a difference. But see, the concern, I'd like to answer Tuhin. He said the popularity of Mr. Modi is increasing day by day. Tuhin, it's better to live in reality, understand what actually is going on. I'm going to quote you a research. It is Pew Research Center. It's a think tank. It says in 23 countries, Mr. Modi's, India's reputation under Narendra Modi has come down. In 5 European countries, it has declined by 10%. Highest in France, 31% decline. 61% people have negative view of India. In 2008, 70% had a positive view about India. Please listen to me, Tuhin.
One by one. Tuhin, you can respond to him. You can respond to him. Let him make his point. You can respond to him.
Later on. Freedom House Index says in 2019 it labeled India as a partially free democracy. UN reporters say that internet shutdowns are a violation of human rights, and India, among the G20 countries, has the maximum number of internet shutdowns. More than 2, total was 84. So under Narendra Modi, the reputation of India globally has come down. Now let me point something. See, Madhav, people are concerned that Mr. Modi is going to G7 and they are scared that he might make some puerile, unsubstantiated remarks which he is known to. Because he is an individual, while talking to students, he once said that there's nothing like climate change. Mausam nahi badla hai, hum badal gaye hain. When asked about chills that people are feeling, he said, no, this is not chills. Actually, people's tolerance towards weather has come down. That's why they are behaving this way. And in G7 summit, climate change will be a big issue to be discussed. I hope Narendra Modi doesn't open his mouth there, or somebody has written something logical and sensible for him to speak either, or somebody has told him, sir, please keep your mouth shut.
What does that statement that you just made on climate change have to do with him being an international leader of a diminished stature? I don't even get the connection there, Faizan.
It's an important discussion that will be happening in G7 summit.
So just abuse him. So just abuse the Prime Minister then.
Who's abusing? There are people are just getting scared because Mr. Modi is known to make unsubstantiated comments and remarks and lowering the dignity of India. He has done this earlier also by showing this when he went to China. You don't know what he said about India.
Okay, Tuhin and then Ishkaran. Yeah, Tuhin.
One more point. It is only expected that the Samajwadi Party would toe the same line as Rahul Gandhi, who has been for the last 2 years, vilifying India's democracy at every international fora. And that is exactly what Samajwadi Party is doing on your show. Fact is that, these people by hook or by crook are justifying
Faizan, you spoke, nobody interrupted you. Please extend the same courtesy.
No, it's just amusing. I have a limited point over here. The point is that instead of calling out the chicanery of Jairam Ramesh and the illogical intent and the absurdity of his comment, these people seem to be, falling on all sorts of alibis to justify it, which is very shameful.
Right. All right. Let me quickly bring in Ishkaran as well. Ishkaran, you want to respond to what Faizan was saying?
Madhav, it was fanciful, maybe a little silly in the beginning to say a person with 240 and a pre-poll alliance of 290 doesn't have a mandate, but now it's become downright stupid. By this logic of what Jairam Ramesh has said, no Prime Minister of India since 1991 should have gone to a global event till 2014. That is of course not the case. And they talk about the constitution day in, day out. We have a parliamentary system of government in which a government gets formed in this manner. So if you talk about constitution, run an election on constitution, at least respect the constitution that it is a fully legally formed government. In this case, not even a post-poll alliance, but a pre-poll alliance. Even a post-poll alliance is good enough, which has happened over the last 30 years. So let us be very clear, this is becoming stupid. Now coming to the main issues which are involved here, two aspects which have to be considered here. First aspect is that when the Prime Minister goes abroad, there is of course a problem with the likes of Rahul Gandhi who go out and address 100 or 200 people in private events where probably half the people present out of that 100 people are not even Indians. So of course somebody who goes out gets the respect on the international stage or fills out stadiums, which at one time was the exclusive bastion of the Gandhi family. Maybe that leads to some insecurity and people have to please their leaders, so they have to put out trollish statements. But it just shows you in bad light, the same way as Manishankar Iyer could go to Pakistan and say, "Inhe hataiye, hame laiye." The same way as they can go out and say that we will be good for Pakistan, we are aman ki asha. And lastly, when you quote international surveys of what is the reputation of a leader in X country, Y country, B country, he is the Prime Minister of Bharat. His reputation in India matters. If he is liked by some country, it is because it is going with aligning with it. If somehow Indian interests don't align with that country, could be any country, he has to stand firm on Indian interests. For example, he bought oil from Russia, less than 1% to 40%. Entire European media, I remember how many questions were asked to Mr. Jaishankar, why are you buying oil from Russia? And his answer was there, in one afternoon you buy gas and oil from Europe, which is more than what we buy in a year. So obviously certain interests in Europe will not like him. On other things, certain interests will not like him in other countries. Point is, what is his rating in India? And that is the answer we got. He is the third time Prime Minister of India with a strong mandate. And stop focusing on trollish statements which say that 290 is not a sufficient government. That's just stupid now.
All right. Respond to that, Faizan, because at the end of the day, you may say that there are problematic things that have happened diplomatically, but you're not acknowledging the tough positions that India has taken, whether it's buying oil from Russia, whether it's vaccine Maitri during COVID. There are, of course, huge measures that this government has also taken. Faizan.
See, Madhav, I'd first like to answer what Ishkaran was saying about how many people attend Mr. Modi's functions. See, that's a paid propaganda. Everybody knows these are events. It is the taxpayers' money that Narendra Modi has been spending for these propagandas, and it's the taxpayers who have finally spoken and voted him the way the voting has happened. So you should come down from this, stop being so arrogant. That's exactly what I want to say. Apart from you said the opposition is making comments and statements which bring down the reputation of the country. You should know when Narendra Modi himself in China, in South Korea, in Canada, in UAE, he's been talking bad about India. कि पहले इंडियन होने पे आपको शर्म आती थी. People thought कि क्या sin कर दिया है कि इंडिया में पैदा हुए हैं. He also made a comment somewhere that a majority of the people were shifting out of India. They were denouncing their nationality. To that, Mr. Narendra Modi and the people who support Narendra Modi should know that the maximum number of people who are leaving Indian nationality has increased under Narendra Modi. From 2014 to 22, 96,292 people have increased per year who are leaving Indian nationality. You should know that. That's an average. In 22 itself, 225,620 people left Indian nationality. Why exactly is this happening? Because they are moving to other countries for better opportunities, to lead a better life. Narendra Modi has made the life of middle class, of the poor, miserable in India. And that's the reason the middle class and the poor are finally voting against Bharatiya Janata Party. You should understand.
All right, people leaving the country, of course, immigration has been happening for a long time, but Ishkaran, please respond.
Madhav, that is why I started with this propaganda that the poor, the middle class have voted. Voted what? Mr. Narendra Modi to the post of Prime Minister? He has the biggest mandate since 1991 or maybe 89, and that is the propaganda. One second, I did not interrupt you.
Faizan, no one has interrupted you. Please, this is not fair.
I didn't interrupt you. I let you have your entire say. Madhav, it is half a sentence. People, the middle class, the poor, the X, the Y have voted against Narendra Modi and he's lost the government. That is the full sentence. Unfortunately, they cannot make the full sentence because he's again the Prime Minister. That is why I said 5 days, this silliness of he's not a Prime Minister is enough. But now he has a bigger mandate. Forget 2014. He has a bigger mandate since 1991. He has a bigger mandate than Congress got in last 30 years. And we are still debating that he did not get enough votes. He has gone into new territories. One Odisha, which was a non-existent BJP unit in 2014. But we don't have to keep rehashing it. The facts have spoken. The Prime Minister has been sworn in. The cabinet has been formed. And you can keep having this pipe dream that voters have voted against it. But end of the day, democracy has certain rules, certain parameters. You went against EVM. Now nobody speaks against EVM because luckily you got, or whatever reasons, you got a good result for yourself and you are very happy. Similarly, because you talk about constitution, respect the constitution. It's a duly elected Prime Minister. Acknowledge that, then discuss his policies. The problem is you're not willing to acknowledge that he's a duly elected Prime Minister, which is in teeth of the constitution you carry and which is frankly a Naxalite position to devalue Indian democracy. Stop doing that.
All right. We'll have to leave it there, gentlemen. Let's wrap up this debate. Certainly, of course, a very important one, given that the Prime Minister has, in fact, is on the way to Italy. And at the end of the day, the larger question is this, that while certainly domestic politics is noisy, there are, of course, divisions along party lines. When it comes to our own policy as a country, our position as a country, particularly when it comes to international events such as these, perhaps can there be some amount of bipartisanship? That's perhaps the only question that emerges from all of this. I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us. Tuhin Sinha, Sushant Sareen, Ishwaran Bhandari, Lokesh Jindal, Tehseen Poonawala and Faizan Kidwai.